It is believed 1 in 7 children has experienced abuse or neglect in the last year. 1 in 7. That's it. I don't have any quippy, fun opening. I just want to.
You just started with 1 in 7. That's it. That's a lot. That's way too many.
Too many, right?
Yeah. That's 1 in 7 too many.
I'm Jason Burns.
And I'm Danny Nucci, and this is the What About podcast.
Really interesting episode today with actor, comedian.
I don't think interesting is good anymore. I don't think anybody can. I mean, it was interesting. It was fascinating, actually, and entertaining and informative. But interesting. It's such a general.
Interesting for me because it's been such a weird journey for me the last couple of months, and then this book came along, and I feel like it was just like,
it spoke to you, didn't it?
Did.
Well, there's a lot of parallels, unfortunately.
It is right down to working at a video store.
Right. I really wanted to talk to him about bad movies. I mean, just because I do the film club thing. For those that don't know, I do a film club every week that started during the pandemic. We watch a movie and then we discuss it like a book club. It's friggin' awesome. So I wanted to discuss it with him. But yeah, I just found that he really had such a lovely attitude about it.
He did, and I think that's what I took from the book as well, is that even and people should get the book, they should read the book, but even in his darkest moments, he found levity in places, and I think that's what was so inspiring.
That's sort of what helped him through. I think he discovered comedy, he discovered the funny, and which if you don't laugh about it, you're definitely going to cry. I just like the idea of continuing to grow and evolve, and that you don't arrive somewhere. And I think a lot of people have this idea that they're going to deal with these issues and get on the other side, and that's it. And then they can rest on fuck you island. And it's certainly not been my experience. I mean, certainly things get easier, and it's nice when you can sort of go, oh yeah, that's the thing. People ask me about therapy, and I just go, the purpose of therapy is so that you can go, oh, it's not this that I'm dealing with, it's that. It's that thing. That's why I'm having this reaction, which I think was your journey, wasn't it, when you read the book?
Yeah. I mean, my journey, so like Paul's journey was so similar to mine in that he never saw it as strange until other people said, hey.
He never saw it?
Saw
oh my
it.
God, you had the R at the end of, oh my God, you never saw it.
He never looked at it as strange until he grew up and other people said, hey,
that's odd.
That's odd. And then I had the same experience where I'm like, oh, maybe that was not how everybody else had things happen. So yeah.
No, but I mean, you have your own quirks that made you aware that perhaps there's something in your past that has affected you to a degree that as a adult man, you have had to make adjustments that may not be conventional.
Adult man is going a little far, Danny. Come on.
Well, you do a very good impersonation of an adult man. You really do. It's quite good, actually.
Thank you. I just want to interrupt with one thing here. Based on what we're talking about, as you know, I'll just let the listeners know that we had to put one of our dogs to sleep last week.
I know.
Gabby, who was about to be 13, she was going through a lot of stuff. But Danny, what you don't know is this Friday another dog is coming to live.
I was gonna say, did you get another dog? That's so. I mean, it doesn't make up for the dog, but it's nice.
No, it does not. 100%.
Kate, yeah, of course it doesn't. But it's nice that Kate's like.
It really just sort of happened in a weird way, like the universe. So my niece, her husband is in the Navy, and they're getting restationed in Hawaii, so they couldn't bring the dog with them. So the dog is coming with us.
Oh, that's nice.
And so that is my wife's Mother's Day present for this weekend.
That's cool.
Dog. So
that's awesome. Well, we talked to Paul Scheer, whose book, Joyful Recollections of Trauma, is coming out soon. Please pre-order it. It's really terrific. So without further ado, the very funny and prolific Paul Scheer.
Scheer, thank you for joining us.
I am so excited to be here.
Where are you, by the way? Here.
I am here. I'm in Los Angeles. I said here, but I mean, are you guys in Los Angeles?
I'm in LA. He's in the woods in Massachusetts.
Massachusetts, in the woods. It feels like I have a lot of friends who have done that. They have just gone, not off the grid, but they've lived this lifestyle. Meanwhile, we're here like suckers, just hanging out in LA.
Paul, have you gone outside? Hold on, like suckers. Paul, have you gone outside today? It's friggin' gorgeous.
It is. It is a nice day. It's beautiful out.
Well, I will say in the woods in Massachusetts, it's 70 degrees and sunny today as well. So, the weather travels, it doesn't always have to be beautiful just in LA.
I just got back from Chicago, and it seems like Chicago has about 4 weeks in which it's beautiful, right? It's like before it gets too hot and it's just humid
and muggy, right? Yeah.
Right. So it was like 50 degrees all weekend in Chicago, and people were out in short shorts and like any excuse to take off their shirt. I was like, this is wild. It's like a sweatshirt day, and people are partying like it is hot summer.
Illinois golfing weather. Exactly.
Yes.
Well, Paul, I'm going to fan out on you for a bit because this book, when it was sent to me, as Danny knows, I've been on this little odyssey of rediscovering and understanding my own trauma as a child and sort of coming to terms with it and what it was and what it wasn't. And then I got this book and I read it in one night because not only did I relate to it,
no, this is true. He called me the next day. He goes, have you read Paul's book? I'm like, you just sent it to me. He's like, I'm like, you just said. He's like, yeah, no, I read it. It's really good, man. It's really intense. It's brought up a lot of stuff for me. There's stuff I need to do and look at. I'm like, wow, great, Jason. That's wonderful.
Love it. Oh man, that means the most to me.
But also how you wrote it is so digestible and easy to get through. And I think the way that you didn't pile on with all of the darkest chapters together and you kind of spread it out and interwove all these happy moments as well really made it
something
that was a journey and not just like a chronicle of all the bad stuff that
I appreciate that. It's tricky when you're writing about things that are heavy. Like I know that just in my life, if I ever talk about this, I don't really ever talk about it. I have a tendency to pull back from even going there because you can see automatically people get tense. I've done press, for this book where, people haven't read the book and that's fine. I don't mind, we're talking about it. And when they ask me what it's about, and if I go over there, I could see people on the other side just freeze. And I'm like, but it's funny. And as a matter of fact, there's a funny story about Christopher Walken in there and they just kind of edge out of it. But it's interesting because I think that we all have these stories. I think the most relatable stories is like, you tell people about a breakup, you tell people about how you grow up. It's what actually connects us. But at the same time, I think we often are afraid to kind of go there with each other. Like, I don't know how to react. What do I do? Do I give too much emotion?
Also, you don't always go. This is my experience. I'm not saying it's yours, but I didn't go there with myself. I didn't come to terms with some of the stuff I dealt with as a child until
which I want to get into. But before I really do, I actually want to get into it. One of the great things about interviewing you is it's kind of incongruous that this is the book that you've written and that we're really talking about, given that you have such an incredible comedic background where, you sort of avoid all this stuff and make people laugh and entertain. And obviously you do it in so many different ways. You have so many platforms of entertainment. My question to you is when did you actually start to go, you know what, I think I'm going to be a performer? When you went to NYU? Did you start at home? Were you doing plays? Like, when did it go, you know what, I might go this direction?
Yeah. Look, I think like most kids that don't grow up in like New York City proper or LA, to be in TV and movies is just a ridiculous want, right? You're not surrounded by it. You don't understand it. It's not.
And Paul, let's add that this was in the 80s when there was 4 networks too,
right?
So,
yeah. And there's no internet and there's no way to like find, like, there's no books on this, right? I didn't know, like I just liked, I love TV. I mean, honestly, that's where it really started. I love TV. I was a latchkey kid. I came home every day and I would watch TV for like 2 to 4 hours, and it was like rerun after rerun after rerun. I wasn't watching cartoons as much as I was watching like, Different Strokes, Happy Days, Silver Spoons, whatever it was. And I just wanted to figure out how to do it, so
you did think, okay, I'd like to figure out how to do this more than these are just my friends. These are my people that I come and hang out with at the end of the day.
Well, I think it was like part that, and like, it was like, oh, I want to be in that. Like, I want to watch it, but I also want to be in that world.
So that kind of thinking started when you were doing that started to creep in. Yeah.
I mean, I think I'm an only child, right? So I TV was like my friend, right? I wanted to be in those worlds. I mean, one of the best experiences of my life, and it's going to sound silly, was just this year. I got to be on the Night Court reboot, right, with Melissa Rauch. And, there I am on the set of the show that I watched as a kid. It's the exact same set. They built it from the exact same models, same pieces are in it. And then there's John Larroquette, who was on the show. Like it felt like more than anything that I've ever done, like I got a chance to step into that thing, into that world.
I had the same experience. I was working on a show called Call of Duty, and I'm
Okay.
sitting, and they've got all the cast chairs together, and I'm sitting, and all of a sudden I see this guy walk over and sit down next to me. I look over, it's Lee friggin' Majors, the
Oh my
$6 million
God. Right,
man,
yeah,
and he
right.
starts chatting to me, and I'm like, this is the most surreal moment of my life. It was so odd.
Well, even just last week we had Tony Danza on, Paul, and I'm thinking, this is my childhood. This is my
Yeah.
maid.
I know. It's like the connection that we have, and you said it already, but the 4 network thing, right? There wasn't that many people. Everyone watched the same sitcoms. Now, it's like, did you see Baby Reindeer? Oh no, I mean to. I want to go see it. Have you watched this other one? Oh no,
Right.
I want. Like to find somebody who's actually watched the show that you've watched. It really is like Russian roulette. But back then, like we all knew these shows, and for better or for worse, you were forced to watch it. Like my grandma watched MASH.
Mhm.
I watched MASH, like
Mhm.
reruns, of course, but it was like,
Did you get the Entertainment Weekly fall TV preview? That was my
oh,
favorite.
can I'll do you one step better than that. I mean that maybe I'm older than you both, but I used to look forward to the TV Guide
Oh, absolutely.
fall
Yeah.
preview.
Yeah.
Sure.
That was I would sit with that and go through and go, all right, this is this show. And like you were mapping out it was like going on a vacation, like, okay, this show looks good. I'm ready for this. I love that. And then Premiere Magazine, Entertainment Weekly, all those. I loved getting.
And so at what point did you start to when you went to school? Is that when it started? You started performing sort of professionally, so to speak.
Yeah, like I started. So if you want to go way back, I'll give you like a very
Well, just
brief
the,
version
sort
of
yeah,
it.
the entry point, because the entry point to me is so it's the thing that
Yeah.
launches it, and either it sustains or it doesn't.
Well, so I grew up in Long Island, and there's a local paper there called Newsday. Every Wednesday, they had a section called Kids Day, and Kids Day was just like a column, on one of the pages, and it would have like fun stuff for kids. And they highlighted an acting teacher. This acting teacher, she teaches kids how to be, they're in soap operas and movies, whatever. And I just cold called this woman off of the Kids Day ad, and I was like, I want to be an actor. How do I do it? And that was my first entry point into acting. So I got in there, and these kids were professional. They were on soap operas, very attractive. Like they knew how to sing and dance. And
They
I
had
just,
headshots already.
yeah, they had headshots. They were professional. They called adults by their first name. I wasn't ready for
How
that.
many auditions have you been on? Never.
Right,
Oh,
exactly.
I see.
They're like, what pieces have you prepared? And I'm like, none.
I don't even know what pieces are.
Yeah, where do I get pieces? I'm sitting there transcribing episodes of Magnum PI. So that was really my first entry into it. Getting in there, feeling like this woman, even though I don't know how connected she was, had some connections, right? And I would do these shows, and it wasn't with my school; it was with this theater program. And then she had a friend who was a casting agent, and then I was able to go on my first real audition, and I was so excited about it. Yet I didn't know what an audition was. It was like, okay, I'm going to be prepared. It was a commercial audition, and a commercial
So she
audition
was legit, though. She was.
I'm going to say that
Mostly
she had a
legit.
friend who was a casting, mostly legit. Like, I mean, I like, it was funny. I talk about this in the book a little bit. Like I, when you ask her like, oh, who have you taught? And she's like, oh, too many people to name,
Right.
and like, what have you been in? Oh, it's so many projects I can't remember. She was vague, but there were kids that had been on like All My Children,
Mhm.
and they've been in some commercials. I didn't recognize them. It wasn't like they weren't like Danny Pintaro from Who's
Sure.
the Boss. They were just, but they were working on some level. And so I had my first audition, and I didn't understand what an audition was. And I was dressed to be like a cool gamer. And I walk into this room with like 50 other kids that look just like me. And that was like the first shock. And go in and do my audition, which had no lines, just me trying to play video games and look cool. And I got a call back, but I don't know if I put this in the book. So I auditioned for it, never heard back, and kind of was bummed about it. I was like, damn it, I wish, I thought I did a good job. Years later, I found out from my mom that I did actually get a call back, but my parents didn't want to bring me back to the city. They're like, we don't want you to be doing this. Like, we don't want you in this world. And I have to say, great. That was a good decision because I lived a normal life, right? I think that these kids, I've worked with kids, I've auditioned kids. It's a tough life
Mhm.
to you're giving up a piece of your childhood to be a professional. And it's such a crapshoot.
Well, and one of the things I took from your book, Paul, is that you loved childhood. You really enjoyed yourself.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was a kid. I think most kids do to a certain extent. Like, I think that, like, when you're forced to not be a child, I've talked to friends who are professional athletes. There are this,
Mhm.
you lose parts of your childhood. Those are the parts that are the most important: the socialization, like the fun, the comedy, your personality. So anyway, long story short, I don't really, I act in high school, but that's just high school plays. It's not like some,
But you're loving it at this point. This is what I've been looking to do. That I
yeah.
feel alive. And did you start doing any kind of sketch or improv, or that is that when that started
No, not
to
even
come to
then. I mean,
fruition?
the best that I had was I was lucky that video cameras became affordable about the time I was in high school. So I could just make my own shows and I would run around and make my own shows and do all this sort of stuff. Then I'll just fast forward and say, after I leave high school, I kind of like, well, I have to be professional now. I can't, there's nothing to do. So I forget about it. I'm just going to go and be a communications major, whatever. And then my girlfriend at the time, she was taking a painting class and she was like, you should take an acting class. And that's when I kind of stumbled back into this thing that I liked in high school, called Chicago City Limits, which was like an off Broadway improv show. And I started taking classes there, and that was kind of the most professional thing. And that's when the world opened up to me, like, oh my gosh! But these people didn't have commercial agents; they weren't working professionally. And then I found the UCB, and the UCB, which is the Upright Citizens Brigade, which is Matt Walsh, Matt Besser, Amy Poehler, and Ian Roberts. That's when I was like, oh shit, this could be real. Like, I never thought it could be real. I was just doing what I liked. I was like, oh, I like doing comedy. I'll have a regular job. Oh, I like doing comedy. It just kind of, I always tell
But they
people,
were also doing it differently, right? They were more
yeah,
like outlaw, like, it was like the punk rock version of it.
absolutely. Like, yeah, I think it's like, I guess. And like, Danny, to answer your question, I'm not even trying to be vague on it. I think, people are always asking me when they're coming up and they want to do this stuff. They're like, well, what do you do? How do you get involved with it? And there's no real simple or easy answer. I mean, the way I stumbled into it was so scattershot. You could never follow my trajectory to it, but I think the one thing that I found that kept me in it and kept growing was finding people that you like working with, that make you laugh, that you see eye to eye with. And then those people, like, I traveled with those people on some level through all of this and still to this day.
Yeah, I noticed that a lot of your credits have a lot of the same people in it.
Yeah, I mean, look, the UCB came to New York at like a bang. No one was talking about improv. Improv was lame. It was stand up. That's New York was a stand up city. I think most places were a stand up city. If you went,
And correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, but a lot of stand-ups kind of look down on improv, right? They're like,
I think
"Oh,
everybody looks down on improv, or at least they did back then. Like, improv was not well regarded. Like, Second City was improv, Groundlings was kind of like this sketch improv, but those are like the only two theaters that I felt like legitimized that art form. And New York was stand up, So I was doing improv. I was having fun. I was trying to explain people, like, when I got that job at Chicago City Limits and their touring company, people were like, "Oh, what do you do there?" I'm like, "Oh, I do improv." And they're like, "What's that?" And I'm like, "Okay," And then you have like
It's like Saturday Night Live, but we don't film it.
exactly. And we're making it up. And we're making it up on the spot. And so that was really fun. But UCB comes in and they're like a punk rock show. They're doing shows on a 5-floor walk up. The Ramones are playing. They're basically drinking beers on stage. They're improvising. I'm watching those four improvise with, Tina Fey and Rachel Dratch and John, Benjamin and John Glazer, like people that will grow into these huge people. Adam McKay, but I don't know them from anything. I saw Adam McKay at the zoo one time and I was so psyched. I was like, oh shit, there's the guy from UCB. Meanwhile, he was like the head writer of SNL
so
at that
you
point.
you saw your people in these people, right? Like these were like you could relate to what they were saying in the improv.
Yeah, they were young, they were bold, and it felt like this attitude of I don't care what you think. We're going to bully this in. And I think that UCB was really the reason why people's response to improv has changed. I just came out of Chicago. We did 5 shows in Chicago over the last 3 nights, all sold out shows. We're going to Portland and Seattle. Like, really, you could never do that. You couldn't tour
I saw
with
that
improv.
Portland is sold out as well.
Yeah. So it's like, it's crazy. We have like standing room only in Seattle. And it's like, and when I was starting off, like, that was not a thing, but UCB grew and became cool. Like, all of a sudden, Robin Williams would perform with us, or Mike Myers would sit in with us. You know, people were in the audience. You look in the audience and you see famous people, like, you know, and that was the beginning of it being something cool. Improv went from being something lame and looked down upon to something that was like, oh, we got to go see this show. And that to me was, if that didn't happen, I don't have a career. I would be doing this in the theater, and I would be working on the side, and I would probably have given it up.
So in essence, this part that you kind of creating your own content started way back when you got a camera, and has continued in terms of that's part, because obviously when you're improvising, there's a certain amount of writing on the fly that you're doing.
Yeah.
You've written a bunch of shows, and now you're doing one with another person you love working with, your wife.
I know. Yeah.
I'm just making the assumption. I liked working with my wife. I'm assuming you like working with your
wife.
wife.
I love working with my wife. It's amazing. You know, I think that I'm always like, not hesitant, but I always want to be aware of, you know, we've been together for such a long time. My wife and I, June and I, we've been together for over 15 years. So I feel like it's a good time for us to work together. We know each other. We're committed to each other. You know, I never want my wife to be my business partner. You know, it's hard, or you know, it's like, because, you know, you work on sets, you get irritated with people, you know, or whatever it is, you know, the best sets, you're like, oh, fuck, I just want to get home. And, you know, and I want to make sure that my wife never becomes that, or I've never become that to my wife. But I think at this point we can do that.
Yeah. You've navigated enough.
Yeah.
But what a great message for your kids, though. You know, not only are mom and dad enjoying time with each other, but we're also able to work with each other. That's a great message for the kids.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is like, I feel incredibly lucky to be able to do what I get to do, work with the people I get to work with. And look, and there's different levels of it. You know, to me, you know, I would say that I'm still making those videos with my handheld camera. Like, you know, it's I do a show with Rob Hubel I've been working with for 20 years. We're just having fun. And I think that really is the crux of it all. Like, you can't dictate success. You can't there's no path. The only thing you can do is create and have fun creating. And you find like-minded people that want to create, worry about the end result. Like, just make it good. And then people will find it. Like, I was talking about this the other day, like Baby Reindeer on Netflix. Everyone's talking about it. 22 million people watched it. I would guarantee you no one at Netflix thought, oh, Baby Reindeers are going to be our next hit show. That was a show out of Scotland that was like, who knew? And it just popped. And, you know, so you have to be ready for that. Like, there's no, especially now where we live in a world where there's so many shows, like, there's no way to go like, oh, that show's going to work. I was on a show for 3 years, Black Monday. And I think the hardest, that had Don Cheadle, Regina Hall, Andrew Rannells, myself, Casey Wilson. The biggest problem with that show is on Showtime. No one got Showtime. Everyone's like, oh, I really want to watch it. Don't have Showtime. You know, so then, you know, you get behind these bars sometimes of just like, oh, content is hard to get. So anyway, all that being said is like, I think I try to approach everything since the beginning to now with just a sense of, let's have fun. Let's have fun and try it. Let's experiment. And hopefully someone somewhere will see it and support it and add on to it.
I'd like to steal a little something from a friend of our podcast, Rob Lowe. You were on his show.
Love Rob.
And you had talked about experimenting in an audition in that.
Oh, yeah.
Where you actually sat on your head for an audition? Is that right?
Yeah. So I was watching, I'm always trying to like, look, I'm the same way, even to this day. Like, I watched this thing with Uta Hagen on Instagram yesterday. I'm like, oh, that's good. I love to learn. I love putting myself in a position where I could be taught. And I was getting commercial auditions and I wasn't booking them and I couldn't figure out why. And I watched this documentary about Happy Days. And in the middle of Happy Days, Robin Williams comes in as Mork. Mork, an alien, starts off his appearance on Happy Days, which is even crazy to think about. They talk about trying to figure out who this Mork character could be. And Robin Williams came in and they said, and he comes in and he's auditioning on the main stage in that living room. And he just sits on the couch, but he sits on his head. And everyone's like, oh my God, he just does the scene completely normal, but he's on his head. And I instead of taking away the message, which is do something different, make yourself interesting, I took away the message of oh, I should do this on my head. So I don't even think about how to do it, when to do it. I just go, in my next audition, I'm doing it on my head. So it was for Skittles. I go into audition, and now the only thing in the room is a chair with wheels, like an office chair, right? And I'm like, okay, I'll get on my head. Now, have I ever
Committed.
have I ever experimented
This is
doing
very
this?
dangerous.
Yes. I've never gotten on my head before. I have no core strength at all at that point, barely any now. But I decide I am going to get on my head. And, think about it. Try to get on your head on a wheelie chair. It's impossible, right? And I'm trying to do it, and I'm getting there, and I'm struggling. And I feel like if I look out of the scene and I see myself from, behind the casting director, this casting director is mortified. What the fuck is this guy doing? Is he insane? And I think she asked me, oh, can I help you with anything? I'm like, oh no, I'm going to try to do it on my head. She's like, you know what? You don't have to worry about doing it on here. Why don't you just do it normal? I was like, oh yeah. I'll do it normal. Oh yeah, that's right. I'll
That
do it
story
normal.
reminds me of Arrested Development, where Tobias goes in to audition for a fire sale, and he thinks he's on fire.
Yes.
It's a fire sale.
You are just like, it is so funny because you're just trying so hard. Like, I think the thing that I didn't realize as an actor coming up, I was like, man, you think that there's a reason why you don't get cast. And most of the time, there isn't. I've been on that other side of the table.
Right.
I could see 85% of people are doing a great job. It's fine. It's just not and then one person pops. And why do they pop? It may pop because that's exactly the person I envisioned when I was writing it. It may pop because they sound different. It very rarely is it like, whoa, I've never seen anyone do the lines like this,
In my experience, it's not even that they pop. Like, I don't know if your experience is similar to mine, but a lot of times when I've been on the other side, you're going, oh, I want to hire her. Oh, she's so good, but this one looks right. If we could just take her and put her together and put them together, and that's a lot of times you're like, but she was so good, but we got to hire this one. It's just the way it is.
I literally just auditioned some people for the show that I'm doing with my wife, and I will tell you, every single one of them, it could have done it. Literally, it's like they were all great, and it was just 5 people, and then there just really becomes, it really is like, well, what's that flavor that mixes in with the rest? And it's like everyone, and everyone brings in their own. So it's like, there is a little bit of this misnomer about like popping or doing it. Michael Keaton said something I thought was really great. He was like, this is your chance to perform. As an actor, you don't get a chance to perform that much, especially if you're just auditioning all the time. So like, just own the stage. You're bringing yourself to it. And that's really what it is. Like, like very rarely are we transforming ourselves into this whole other thing. I think that
Speak
we look
for
at
yourself.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm just kidding.
But that's it, right? Like that, like you are, it's a piece of you is in a piece of this character, right? And it's like freeing yourself up to just bring it. And that's it. You bring yourself.
But also you're trying to fit all the pieces together to create that big puzzle, which is, you experienced it on the League. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. Everybody just works together in a way that flows that you would never even know beforehand. It happens that you're in a groove with each other.
Yeah, like, I mean, that's a great ensemble. It's like, and and you see it a little bit. You got to like, with the League, it was really fun because we have like Nick Kroll and I both came out of UCB, comedy background. Nick's more of a stand-up, but great improviser. You have John Lajoie, who comes out of Canada, who's making like YouTube videos. Mark Duplass and Katie, who are, they are coming out of the indie film world. And then you have Steve Ranazizi, who's like a stand-up. And what it was is I think we all kind of respected each other's craft. It was like, oh, I'm really a fan of like the movie that you just made, Katie. And I love what you're doing over here, John. And so we came together under this like person, Jeff Schaefer and Jackie Schaefer, who, Jeff worked on Seinfeld and Curb. And, and it was like, we just liked working with each other. And it's like, we were enough different that it really works. So it doesn't feel like 5 people, like no, I always said like the reason why the League works is because there were only jokes that I could do on that show. There were only jokes that Nick could do on that show. And we would be doing scenes, improvising them before, as we're getting through. And Nick would be like, oh, you know what? That's actually a joke. You should say this. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, great. And you can say this. Like we would share it.
That's a rarity because people don't, people want to keep the good stuff for themselves.
But we also knew that it's better coming out of Ruxin's mouth. If I give him, I'm like, oh, you should, or like Ruxin, you should say this when I say that, because then that's gonna it's like we're supporting each other. We're finding that thing.
And especially once you've been doing the show for a while, you really know each other's voices and you know what works and you've seen it. So it starts to become an entire flow.
Well, before we jump into the childhood trauma, Danny,
I wasn't going to talk about childhood
Oh, okay.
trauma. Did I have childhood trauma look on my face?
I didn't see it on your face, Danny. I thought you were going into another acting thing.
I was going somewhere else, but no, go ahead. No childhood trauma. No. Go, Jay.
No.
I just wanted to mention something else from the book that I related to, which is I worked at a video store.
Oh,
I worked for Blockbuster.
Okay.
It is like the gateway to like popularity when you're in high school. And
oh my gosh, yeah.
Let's talk about screeners. Did you get some good screeners at Blockbuster?
See, no, I never got a screener. I don't even know. I didn't even know that screeners were an option. No, we were, we like the best that you could do at Blockbuster is the night before a movie came out, you would have them waiting there so you could grab them. You could get it the night before, I
still have all my screeners I have the Worst Witch screener from.
Oh my gosh.
It's like a prize of my collection.
I love it.
We got them like 3 months ahead of time.
You see, so that's like the difference probably with that is you were probably in like a mom and pop store.
It was like a Massachusetts chain.
Okay, yeah. So like for a Blockbuster, someone else was getting those screeners and deciding what they get. We were just we were just getting the other ones. But yeah, no, I mean, working in a video store was it like there's many jobs where you might be embarrassed to get seen, right? It's like, oh, I don't want them to catch me working at Burger King. I don't want them to see me over here. But man, working at Blockbuster, everyone came in. It was like a party. It was like running a video, like working there on the weekend was actually fun because it was like a good vibe. It was like being at it sounds silly to say, but like a bar or a club, because people just come in, they're just messing around. They have nothing much to do and they want to hang out.
And you can talk about your favorite subject.
Exactly.
What about childhood trauma? What I wanted to ask you about is, just based on my own experience, when did you start noticing that whatever this childhood stuff was coming up was going to become a problem and something that you needed to address? Was it in the midst of a relationship? Because in my experience, talking to people and just having lived in the years that I have, a lot of this stuff just comes up in relationships, all kinds of relationships, friendships, romantic relationships, parental, friends, siblings. Is that when you started to see the cracks?
Oh yeah. I mean, absolutely. I think that there are a lot of different ways that you start to see it. We just adopted a dog. And
congratulations.
Thank you so much. And it was funny, like he rolled in something last night, like, just some dirt, and I was about to like wipe him off. And as I picked up my hand, he cowered. I've never hit this dog, right? But he cowered in a way. I'm like, oh, wherever you came from, you have been hit, right? Like you saw, like it was like, and I think that kind of is true for any relationship, right? You something activates you, something reminds you of it, and you bunch up, and whether that is, and I think part of this is being an actor, right? You're in a world of rejection. You're in a world where you're competing and you're trying to get attention, or you're feeling like maybe I'm not getting enough attention. There's these things that could come out, but I truly do believe that in romantic relationships, it starts with this trust, this ability to look at yourself differently. And I think you have two choices there. You can go, oh, it's the other person. They're crazy. They're pushing me. They're this, or it's me. And, I always say like a great relationship needs like two people to be constantly.
Don't you always start with it's them and they need to change and they need to make these adjustments for me to be more comfortable, because I'm not going to look at what's going on for me. You need to adjust to me.
That's it. That's what I'm saying. So you have these two choices, which is like, it's them or it's me. And you're always going to go with it's them. And, I think, or that, and like, there's a moment that I came to where I was like, maybe it's me. And I think the problem is,
well, I think that's what happened to Jason when he read your book. This might be me.
Well, and you have this moment in your book, Paul, where you're sitting down with your wife and you're telling her about something that happened in your childhood that to you seemed normal,
Yeah.
and she was like, "Well, what the fuck are you talking about? That's not normal."
Well, yeah, and I think what it is like, this may be the issue with the relationships thing, and I'll get to what you're saying to Jason in a second. Like, I think that in a relationship, you're getting triggered all the time, so it might be that person. You might be right. This person is triggering me. It's not like right. And
But
why are
isn't
they
that?
triggering?
But isn't by the nature of the term "triggered" actually not the person?
Right. I get. You know what? But yeah, right. I guess if you're triggered, then you have not solved your thing, right?
They basically
Right.
pushed a button that was hot. If the button
Right.
is dull, as
Right. Then it's
happens after you do some work, trigger away. I'm not
right.
affected.
Well, and I think that sometimes you just can get so caught up in, well, they're triggering me, they're doing this, and it is partially right, but and what we don't do is we don't like, so we try to find somebody who like that won't hit that button, but they're gonna hit another button, right? So I kind of stumbled
By the way, good
into
luck with that, everyone.
yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, and look, I've been in my relationship with my wife for 15 years. I think I know myself in a good way. I also know my relationship with my wife. I'm still learning. There's things that I still get triggered by, but I also know how to deal with them. I also can step outside of it. It's not saying like we're never going to be healed. I mean, like, healed in the general sense. There are just things about me as a human being. I am built in a certain way that things will bother me, and it has nothing to do with trauma. It's just like this is me, right? And there's
Your
that too.
chemistry, it's how you're
Yeah.
made. Yeah, yeah.
So, but it's like, so I went to a couples therapist, which is always an interesting thing. Like, I was dating a girl and she's like, we should go to couples therapy. And honestly, if you're dating somebody, maybe this is a bold statement, but don't go to
Are you going
couples
to?
therapy.
I was
It's
going to
not
say,
working.
I,
It's not working.
I disagree. I disagree. I think
All right, tell me. Yeah.
I do. Well, I'll tell you why. Because if there's enough good, if there's enough positive,
Right. If there's enough good,
but you keep coming up against the same issue. Why
Right.
not get a referee to deal with the issue? And
That's
usually what happens is one of the two people has no interest in dealing with the issue, and the relationship
Right.
is never going to move past that. So get the fuck out. And you've learned that through this process.
Yeah, no, and I guess you're right. Like, and the idea of like a referee is a really interesting idea, because I think that like a therapist, I would love the show Couples Therapy, by the way. If you're not watching Couples Therapy on Showtime, it's beautiful. But because you get to basically sit, you're sitting behind the therapist. You're like, what? It's like rooting for a sports game. You see it, and you do see people very clearly in that. And for me, like, I think it's like sometimes it's hard to apologize. It's hard to see yourself as a villain, or even if you're not intending to be a villain. I think it's important to figure out how to have a conversation with your partner that doesn't force you to need that referee all the time too. Because and I think that's the tool that's really the most helpful is like, yes, go to couples therapy when you need it, but also take what you've learned there and get in a place where you can kind of not go head to head every single
Well,
time.
you've got to hear each other.
hard.
You've got to hear
Yeah.
each other. But it comes back to the question that I had for you, Paul, is when did you start noticing I'm not reacting appropriately or proportionately to what is happening in my life, in my relationships, or in my relationship to the outside world? Because I'm assuming,
Yeah.
because that was my experience, that's when you started going, I got to dig. Something's off. I got to dig.
I think because what we just were talking about, I was the opposite. I was like, I am the problem, right? Like instead of she's the problem, I'm like, I am the problem, and I would take it on myself.
Control, of course, because then you can fix it.
Well, yeah, and then what I realized was it was making me really passive. Like, things that were bothering me, I wasn't letting it out. I wasn't actually articulating it, and I think that when I went to this couples therapist with my girlfriend at the time, I was passive in the therapy. I was like, I'll change, I'll go, right? And I think that the therapist recognized on some level, you should be sticking up for yourself a little bit more. Not that you're right and she's wrong, but this is an unbalanced relationship.
But Paul, that has to go back to your relationship with your stepdad, right?
I was going to say, she's not wearing cowboy boots and a gun, right?
Yeah, no, but you know what it is? It's like I'm so wanting to make it right. I think that when you come from a background or a childhood where there is like this trauma going on, like, you're like, I'm going to keep the peace. I'm going to keep it level. I'm not going to blow it up. Like, I've seen what that is. And to me, it was like, I had an on off switch, and what I really needed was a dial, right? Like a 1 to 10. And I only knew how to go from 0 to 10. And I often sided on the side of 0. I kind of muted myself. Yeah, I remember I dated a girl. I didn't put this in the book, but there's this girl that I dated who she would say like she put post-it notes on me, like not literally, but she was like, that's a post-it note. That's something you need to work on. And I would take those. I'm like, okay, yeah, I do need.
That's hilarious.
It's
that
like
is hilarious.
It was
well,
such
I have a joke. I have a joke with
go.
my wife. She goes, put it on the list.
Right.
List of things. That's what we do. Okay, you know what? Put it on the list. The things that I need to change in order to make her life easier. Yeah.
And I still am learning. Like, when I started writing this book, I didn't know this book was going to be the book I was going to write. I didn't like go and go like, I'm going to write a book about.
That's what I was going to ask you. Like, how, because I mean, had you written a book before? I mean, you've obviously
never wrote a book.
lot.
No.
So what was the decision to write a book?
Well, I did. I've been doing this podcast, How Did This Get Made, for 14 years. And it's throughout that show, occasionally I'm talking about, we're talking about this bad movie that we've watched. I'm talking about Jason Statham or Nick Cage. And I'm like, as a matter of fact, I once had a run-in with, a lawnmower. Like my dad used to do this, chase me with a lawnmower. And then I'd look at my wife and Jason and be like, wait, what? Your dad would chase you with a lawnmower? And I'm like, yeah, didn't you all get chased by a lawnmower? Whatever it was, whatever this.
Yeah.
And the audience started really responding to it, like, oh, here's this Paul story. And it became like, oh, these stories, like you had this crazy childhood, which I never really acknowledged that much before. I knew that I had a person in my life who beat the shit out of me. I knew that, but I wasn't telling those stories. But it was kind of like this whole weird world that I was creating. And people were like, you got to write a book. You got to write a book. And there's a part of me wrestling with it. Like, well, I could tell you, I could write a bunch of funny anecdotes, or I could go a little bit deeper. And so I started kind of writing the story that I would tell and then kind of expanding it outward. But in the meantime, as I'm doing this, I'm also, I'm a parent now. I'm dealing with things. Things are coming up for me. I'm also going to therapy. I'm learning even more about myself. Like this is a continual evolving process. Like I'm not like, and I did my therapy and I got out and I understand everything and I never make a mistake and I'm a great this and I'm a great that. I'm not at all. I'm still, I am incredibly flawed, but I am incredibly open to trying to understand and trying to do better.
This book had to be part of that in a way, Paul. It had to be therapeutic, right?
It was incredibly therapeutic, but here's the thing that I'm happy with the book. It's not therapy. This is not my therapy. And I've read some books in the last little bit as I've, because part of my process here is like, I want to read everything that I could possibly read, that people are doing this as well. Because it's important to, I think, to kind of see what you like, what you don't like. I didn't want it to be raw in the sense where I'll do my therapy in my therapy, but maybe if I take something that I got out of my therapy, I can bring it into the book, but I'm not going to be just dumping. And I think that that's important too.
Well, that goes back to what I said at the beginning. It was a perfect mix of sharing what you went through, but also showing that there was light to be found within it all.
Yeah. And I think it's like, at the end of the day, like these books are to entertain. Yeah.
Sorry. Well,
yeah, please.
I think what I find fascinating about the genesis of this book is you started taking this idea that, oh, you know what? Maybe I'll share some of these stories that people seem to be responding to in a book form. And as you're doing it, and as you're, having your own personal growth and development, you started going, let me just talk about that. Or let me look deeper into that. And it sort of evolved into what it is now. Were you surprised by the fact that as you were writing it, more was coming up for you and you felt more comfortable in putting it in print?
Yeah. I think I'm dealing with two different things. When I sold the book, and that's what's a crazy process. It's talk about auditioning.
Sure.
I had written about 200 pages and I met with all these different people. And when you meet with people, they, would ask you questions. You start talking.
So you wrote it on spec first, Paul?
I wrote about, I just experimented. I was like, I didn't want to be one of those people to sell a book and they'd be like, oh shit, I got to write a book. I was like, I want to write. I want to see what I'm writing. I want to see what this is. I have to understand.
You mean like Rob? Did Rob tell you that that's what he did?
Really? Oh my gosh. They see that. Yeah. Like they see like, that's like, for me, it was like, so I wanted to be in control of the process. I want to, and so what I wrote, one of I went with Harper.
Which is weird given your history. Go on.
I know, right? Yeah. It's like, right. Exactly. Yeah. Weird that I was going to have control. But like when I went with Harper's, the editor that bought it, she saw through the writing something that no one else kind of locked into. And she kept on kind of hitting me in that thing. She would talk about it like that. Like, well, this is like a book about this. And I was like, oh, I guess it is. Like, I didn't even see, like, she saw like an underlying spine that I had in there that I wasn't even fully recognizing. And by articulating that to me, because it's interesting, like I thought I would be like talking to my editor every week. I think we probably talked 3 times in the entire process, which is kind of crazy. But just by understanding that, and then everything started to kind of coalesce around it. And then as you're refining it, you start to see things and you build it up. So it was somebody giving me a beacon that I was heading towards. And you're right, like I didn't know, I didn't understand it. I'm not like if I ever was to write a book again, which I would like to do, I would understand how to approach it better, because it was a lot of like, I'm just putting stuff down. Like, what is a book? I don't know. And I just knew I didn't want it to be fully a book about like, and then when I worked on this movie, then when I worked on this
I'm
show.
going to give you the best compliment I can do, which is that to me it felt like the Emblem Entertainment version of childhood
Oh, well,
trauma.
I take it as the highest compliment I could possibly get.
Because it just
Wow.
was somehow you made it entertaining.
Well,
in a
I
way
mean,
that felt
hugely that
nostalgic.
you're amazing for saying it. And you know, I think that I'm lucky. You guys know this too. It's like, I think every bit of, and I'll be highfalutin here, which I don't often like to do, but I'll say everything we create is art. Podcast and art, anything, like we're creating something, right? We're putting something out there. Every initial idea is okay. And what makes it great is the refinement, is the changes of it, is the collaboration that you get. You know, your first episode to this episode is going to be completely wildly different. My idea for a TV show from the inception to the completion is completely different. And I think what I like, and maybe this is the improv background for me, is like I am open to change. I am built in this world of the yes and. It's like, you know, they say improv is about painting a picture, but one brush stroke at a time. And I am allowing myself to be like, oh, that's what this book is. I'm going to change. I'm going to morph. That stuff doesn't need it to be in there anymore. This stuff does need to be in there. And you're constantly wrestling with it. And that to me is the most fun thing about creating, is like you're carving something out of marble, and all of a sudden it you know gets clearer and clearer and clearer and clearer.
And it also helps to stay open and hear things from like your editor, who is
Yeah.
basically going, here's what I recognize, because here's what I've discovered. There's people that maybe can't create or do things in the same way, but boy, they have a wonderful eye and sense about things. Producers,
Yes.
just people that are able to put things together and kind of go, oh, you know what? This is how I see it.
It's like getting an acting note, right? Like I think that like the best directors are the ones who get you to a place or make a choice where you don't feel like you fucked up, but you actually are executing what they want. Like there's 2 types of directors. You know, there's directors I've worked with. They're like, no, do it like this, or that's wrong. And then there's a director who can come up to you, and I've directed too, and you're like, I think maybe here we could just even go lower. It's like, you know, they kind of walk you into the choice. It's never like you did it bad. It's like, why don't we, it's collaborative on their end too. It's like, let's try it. I don't know if I'm right. And that's why I'm like, for me as a director, I love going into an edit room with options. Like I won't want to see the same line 15 times the exact same way. I want to be like, oh, you tried it. Oh, that actually works. Because you don't know it until you see it. And it's all laid in front of you. It's like, put it together. I don't know. It's like, to me, it's like, create and having fun in that creation is the most fun of this job.
Well, Paul, let me ask you this. You love television, you love sitcoms. Most 80s sitcom families were perfect. Do you think like your love of sitcoms was part of that whole kind of wish fulfillment thing with wanting the perfect family during the period of turmoil?
You know, it's funny because in a way, I'm thinking about the shows that I grew up with were really like fucked up families. It's like, all right, here's here's Willis and Arnold. Their mom died, and now they're living in, like, they have a cool life, but and now they're in this house, and then you have like Silver Spoons. Like, yeah, they're rich, but the mom's out of the picture. You know, she's dead. I mean, another dead mom. You have like, you're watching these shows like Rags to Riches. I think we're about a bunch of girls in a boarding school.
Oh, Rags to, yeah. My first crush was a girl from Rags to
Oh,
Riches.
me too. I have a picture of her from one of the girls I loved on Rags to Riches from the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade in New York City. But no, it's like it was like these weird scenarios. It was, like, yes, you have your family ties and you have your good times, but like a lot of the times, I mean, even good times is like a weird thing. It's like, I think for me, watching those shows, what was fun about it was I think they were my friends. Honestly, on some level, I wanted to watch these friends. I loved
your people.
my
These are your people.
Yeah, because I was a
And you
latchkey
also
kid.
and you also know what you're going to get, which is, when you grow up in the household that you grow up, you don't know what you're going to get. You're
Yeah,
going to
right.
step on a landmine at some
Super
point. But
smart,
when you
yeah.
sit down and watch these shows, it's going to be somewhere between here and here. And you don't know where it's going to be, but it's something that you know that you can depend on, that you can count on, which when you've had the kind of trauma that you grew up with, and again, not knowing where the next shot is coming from, which
Yeah.
I've heard. I may not have that experience, but I've heard about it. But when that's the case, these things that you can, it's like the collecting part, the fact that you're a collector. There's something that Jason might know a little bit about this. There's something that settles you and gives you a sense of certainty that you
Makes
didn't
you feel
have.
grounded.
And that's the beauty. I mean, that's the beauty about this, the therapeutic process, or just even learning about your childhood trauma, is you do enough as a human being to try to deal with it until it all eventually stops working. I mean, that's my experience. Is if you don't deal with this stuff in some way, could be spiritually, could be therapeutic, could be in any way. I wouldn't say that there's any particular one way,
100%.
but if you don't do it by the time you're 60, 70, 80 years, that shit ain't going anywhere.
Well,
you're going to be dealing with it then.
Therapy is definitely something that I have done, but it's also not the only thing that I have done. And I think that part of it is just reading, being aware. I think this idea of, you're answering to yourself. And so it's what it's my friend Seth Morris, super funny writer, comedian, actor. He used to have this joke in his stand-up act, and he would say, I went to my therapist today. I got to tell you, I am a very interesting person, and it was and that idea, we have to just explore why we act the way we act. And we don't have to do that with another person there, but we have to and you're right. It's I've done so much stuff, and some people do it. Look, I had a friend who took ayahuasca, went to Peru, his whole life changed, right? Truly just changed. And, we have these blocks, we have these things, however you want to get there. But I do think it's that quote that I don't know who said it, but it's a life unexamined isn't worth living. And it's that's all it is. It's you can do it in every single right. You could just look at it, you could just sit with yourself. But I think sometimes we're afraid to unpack it, because how do you fix it? But I think part of it is
you're trying to avoid discomfort.
Yeah.
Right? You're trying to avoid pain. You're trying to avoid conflict. And these are the things that one has to work through in order to grow. The thing that I talk to people about, just in terms of sort of how I kind of just look at where it might be me, right?
Yeah.
Is I very simply measure, is this a 4? Because I'm reacting like it's a fucking 15.
Yeah.
Is this a 4? Or is it a 5? Because I'm reacting at a 15 for something that should be a 4. And that sort of started to give me insight into, oh my God, I disproportionately react to life, and I've got to start finding it a little bit more this is the right amount. This is right size.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. That's the thing I was talking about with my levels. It was I only could go 0 or 10, right? So and you're when I would go to 10, I was that's too much. I got to turn it down. And then my only way of kind of navigating life was by going to a 0. But that's also not doing it right either. You got to react a 4 to a 4, or react a 4 to a, make a 5 out of a 4. But just,
That's the hope, right? That's the hope where, that I remember when I finally, I was in my first marriage, and I was finally going, I don't think I'm okay with that.
Right. Yeah.
I'd never said that in my life. I'd never said that, Paul. Those words had never come out of my.
Well,
I don't think
the
I'm
thing.
okay with it. It was I put my toe in the water, going, I think I've got to sort of have a voice here, and it was so foreign to me.
Yeah, that's. I think that's really the same journey that I kind of came to as well, which is it was. I didn't want to mess, I felt if I am the voice of saying, I don't like this, I'm creating a problem, right? So better not to create a problem. But then you realize that you're not your full self.
I created a problem.
Yeah.
I was like this, I'll fucking kill you was how it used to go.
Yeah.
And then it went from I'll fucking kill you to perhaps I don't like that, and we can talk about that.
Right. Yeah.
I have an audience question I want to ask you, if I
Sure.
may.
I just want to interrupt you, Danny. This is actually from my editor, Paul. I work in
Oh,
publishing,
okay.
and she pre-ordered your book and got the little
Oh,
postcard sent
nice.
to her, and so she sent me a picture of that today. So this is from my editor. She's a big fan.
Oh,
Oh, that's Mary? Am I
That's
saying it right?
Mari.
Thank
Yep,
you.
Mari.
I don't want to say the wrong thing. Oh, I didn't realize that you were I thought you were about to go into something. That's hilarious.
No.
So, Jason's editor asks, Mari B,
Yeah.
as the food-loving child of a narcissist, I have trauma-related memories associated with specific foods that I carry
Oh, wow.
to this day. I know you love food as much as I do. You've spoken of the best food you've ever eaten. What's your ultimate comfort food, and do you have anything that you've reclaimed from your childhood?
Well, it's interesting. I will just hit this one thing too and say, like, it's burnt in my brain. I can never eat liver. And I thought as I grew up as an older person that liver would be on the menu at all times. That is not true. But my parents wouldn't let me leave the table one time because I wouldn't eat my liver off this plate. And the thought of liver makes me gag. The idea of it, like, oh, it's so upsetting because I'm right back in that moment. The same thing for a wild turkey, which I got way too drunk on during St. Patrick's Day in New
Oh,
York.
I thought you were talking about an actual wild.
Oh, no. I can't look at wild turkey. Wild turkey makes me vomit.
Yeah.
But like, so it's so funny how that gets locked in there. For me, comfort food is, it kind of all runs the gamut. Like, what do I love? But to me, like Doritos probably has been like one of the things that like come around. I'm like, oh, I'll never turn down a Dorito.
As a latchkey kid, do you remember when the Cool Ranch came?
Oh, absolutely. I classify all Doritos in the same thing. I used to like it was like Doritos were and always are like, ooh, that's my Doritos and Twizzlers as far as snack food. Like, I'm like, I will always go for that. And like, if I'm in a, whenever I go on the road, I always try to find a Target and I'll go to that Target or whatever. It's like, whenever I'm feeling a little bit out of place, I'm always grabbing one or two of those things, and look, there's food that I love that I'll eat, but it's like I love having those snacks around. It kind of like it does.
Those are Blockbuster snacks.
Those are Blockbusters. Amen. Yeah, there you are. And then what that last part of the question? Did I answer it or did I give you enough of it?
Anything you've reclaimed from your childhood? She asked.
That's a tricky question. I think that honestly,
you obviously haven't reclaimed liver.
Yes, not liver. No, I think it's on the same thing that like what Danny is saying. Like I reclaimed a voice, like a bit of self-respect. And that's not just because of the book, but that's because of like this journey that I have kind of been on like for over 15 years, but it's like, that was something that as a kid, I think I only knew how to not cause a problem. And it's okay to cause a problem, actually.
Oh, man. I was like, yeah, no, I don't agree with you. I just went like, yeah, no, I don't see it that way. Well, because I think it's true. What if there's enough good things and all of a sudden you can get somebody in there to go, well, what are you hearing her say? What are you hearing him say? What are you hearing them say?
Yeah, but I think from his perspective, it makes sense because that particular relationship didn't work out. So it's like, well, why did we go to therapy?
Well, I think it depends on when you go and what the issues are, right? Listen, if you're going to therapy in the dehydration period, I think it's probably an issue. There's probably a problem there. But yeah, why not sometimes people just go for a little, get through a little bump and then you're fine. You can work it through. But what a treat to talk to him. And I can't wait to go back and listen to his podcasts because I love bad movies and I love talking about them. So I'm excited about that.
Did you hear him say how long he was doing that podcast? 14 years.
Yeah, where have I been? How did I miss it?
I don't know, but I don't think I've done anything 14
You know what
years.
it is? Because I'm just completely consumed with myself most of the time, and I'm not aware of anything that's going on out there. That's the issue.
Well, go back and watch
it.
Season 2, Season 3 of The League are some of the funniest television ever on.
No, I've watched The League. I love The League. No, I love The League.
Those 2 seasons, for whatever reason.
I love it so much that I didn't join any leagues.
There you go.
What?
There you go.
Well, I can't, because I'll just get obsessed.
Yeah,
You know me. I can't do it. That'll become my
I'm
whole
in a
life.
daily baseball league. It's too much. It's too much.
How? What? On top of everything else?
Yeah, I set the lineup early in the morning, and when I'm up and having my coffee, and if something happens where somebody goes down, I'm doomed because I don't update it. But that's daily league.
Wow. God bless you.
Thank you.
Well, this is fun, and God bless all of you, and thank you for listening.
Music by Denny Nucci. Produced and edited by the same two people you heard hosting this show because they have no friends.